half a cup or so of blood just started pouring out of my prosthetics because it was just like hamburger meat from all the friction and the sweat and the salt. When you see a buck you want, you become obsessed with it. It's almost like the hot girl at school. It's just like, oh my gosh, I have to have you. As exciting as that sounds, it just sounds off to me why you would make hunting a competition. The doctors feel like that's why he's still alive, is that he's finding a purpose, he's hunting, he's having a drive, and that's what's keeping him alive. I'll tell you this, I've blown a lot of stocks, and each one of them, the benefit of it is I've learned something from it. This is Sidney Smith, and you're listening to The Wild Initiative.
Put down your latte and pull on your boots.
I've been blessed to harvest 22 of the 29 North American animals with my bow.
My personal 24-hour record for death threats is 88.
They will start putting two and two together and realize this is how you call bulls in.
So when I go hunting now, that's the ethos I take with me. You know, whatever this hunter's going to throw at you, you pull your big girl pants up and you get on with it.
Giant bucks are freaking awesome. They're beautiful. But you know what? I would not trade this first buck for anything in the world.
So I'm a geek. Magicians and dragons and magic swords. I kid you not, man. I'm the biggest dork in the gun business.
I'm Freddie Hartice, the Hollywood Hunter.
This is Aaron Snyder.
Hey, this is Trevin Stoltzfus with Outback Outdoors.
This is Rihanna Carey.
Hi, this is John Sloan of the Interviews with the Hunting Masters.
You're listening to The Wild Initiative.
Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of The Wild Initiative, brought to you as part of the Waypoint Outdoor Collective. Folks, we are throwing it back to one of the first, 24 of my podcasts, throwing it back to episode 23 here, bringing back the one and only Sidney Smith. Sid, man, thanks so much for hopping on with me.
Oh, man, thank you. It's a pleasure. No problem at all.
You know, so we were talking before this, and I was kind of laughing because I was just thinking, I'm like, I was scrolling through Instagram, and you'd made a post about something, and I was liking it, and I was like, oh yeah, it wasn't that long ago. I'm like, what was the episode number I'd sit on? I look back, I'm like, there's no way it was only episode 23. It's no way it was that long ago.
Well, I figured I just did a bad job. Like, oh my gosh, we're never talking to that guy again.
Oh man. No, it's just, it's so funny. It's hard to believe. Like, this will be, I think, episode 164.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Thanks. But, man, I can say, knew you back in the day, back before you were all like this big deal with films and,
I wasn't going bald then, but now I am. So that's what's happening.
I don't know, man. That's nice thing about the hunting industry. There's always plenty of hats to wear. Always.
Yeah.
People throwing them at you left and right.
Yeah. It is. I don't have a shortage of hats. That's for sure.
Oh man.
Yeah. Ask my wife. I think that's one of her pet peeves. Like, I'll get a hat in the mail and she'll be like, "Oh, let me guess, another hat." And I always try to act super excited. I'm like, Lori, that's my wife. And I go, "Lori, guess what came in the mail today? You're not going to believe it. Look at. She's like, "No, I don't want to see any other hats." So.
It's kind of stressful to some extent, like when you're going on a trip, because it's a very critical choice you then have to make. Like when you're leaving, which hats am I going to take here? Like, because you got to have your ones for hunting. You got to have your night out hats, right?
Yeah, your night out hats. Yeah, definitely one. I do wear a lot of hats, so that's it's a good thing I'm in this industry because I like a different selection of hats. But yeah, you're right. And the thing is I also have my favorite hats, and I wash them. They're nasty. They get all salty, and then I have a nice hat. So,
well, that's the funny thing. It's like I've got my one hat, and it's from back when I was in living country in the city. I've worn it on every hunt I've gone on. It's like my hunting hat. That thing has never been washed. It never will be washed. It will disintegrate around me. Like the day that hat gets retired is the day it will like physically not stay on my head, and I can't keep it together with duct tape. Like,
oh, I have some good luck hats like that. In fact, I still have your living country in the city hat that I got from you.
That's I have the ones I wear, and then I have like one, maybe two left from that. Like, so that's like a vintage collectible item. I'm not sure it's worth anything, but it's collectible.
It's true.
But
it's true.
Yeah, man. So I was just thinking about how things have changed since we've had the podcast. And I was thinking about kind of when it changed, because I was thinking about the Mountain Ops, the Cam Haines trail run at my first Total Archery Challenge.
Yeah, that's the first time I think I met you in person.
Yeah.
That was Total Archery Challenge, Park City. No,
I remember
was it Park City?
No, that was Snowbird. That was before Park City, and I remember, thinking I was in pretty decent shape, and that altitude pretty severely made me realize how not ready I was. And I just remember chugging up the hill, and I was losing pace and dropping back and starting to walk. All of a sudden, I feel this hand on my back. Not just like pat me on the back and kind of give me a nice little push, but this hand just grabbed the back of my collar and literally shoved me up the mountain. And I turn around and I'm like, oh, okay. Got you sitting there giving me grief.
Actually, I was just grabbing onto you to hopefully you can pull me up the mountain. So
there we go. We'll go with that one. We'll go with that one. But yeah, and then I remember later that day, you and Trevor Farnes met, and lo and behold, things started happening.
Yeah, that was a turning point in, with the Mountain Ops team. They've always been, good guys, but yeah, that's when I first met Trevor and chatted with him, and the rest has been history. But yeah, good group of guys. They put on a great event, Utah boys, and so I've always been a fan of them, and can't complain.
So how long ago was it the film came out? Was it that year or was it the following?
It was the following. It was an interesting transition. That year I started a new job, and the company that I work for, it's a phone company, a local phone company here in the Uinta Basin, and they also have a multimedia business as well they do on the side that they were trying to start up. And they approached me around the same time. Mountain Ops said, hey, we'd love to do kind of a backstory on you. And, would you be okay if sharing your story and talk about your life's goals as being a double amputee? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that'd be great. But I kind of felt torn because I got, Mountain Ops, which I've, trying to build a relationship with. And I also have my company. And I just kind of pitched the idea if they would be willing to work together. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Mountain Ops and a company called V6 Media worked together and was able to produce a film. It was about the time when I was in the process of hunting with double prosthetics, and then just kind of like my goal of becoming an Ironman. That was my big goal. And I was, doing a few triathlons. I got to a half Ironman status, and I was training for a marathon, and I was, working my way to train for a full Ironman. And that's kind of where the film finished, is right there.
So how did the Ironman prep end up turning out?
It was good. I had some ups and downs. Like the next year we were going to do a marathon, and we actually had a schedule to do a film. And it was like the week before my race, we went to LA to go take the kids to Disneyland. And I thought, let's go to the beach, because my kid's not ever been to the beach. And I'll try surfing without any prosthetic legs. How fun would that be? Well, that was a bad idea. So I ended up crashing off the board, and my stump hit like a rock. And I had broke the bridge between my tibia and fibia. So at that point, my race was done. But after that, yeah, it was demoralizing. I was really frustrated. It took me like 8 weeks till I could start walking again. And I was going to maybe look at trying to squeeze in another marathon, but I just thought, you know what? I have this window where I feel like I can do this Ironman. And so that fall, 2019, the following year, is when I trained to do the Ironman, and in November is when the race was.
And how'd the race turn out?
It was amazing, life-changing. It definitely was something that was very emotional, something that hit me on very different levels, mentally and physically. It was my ultimate goal that I made when I was in the hospital, when I lost my legs, to do the Ironman. It was actually on TV, and I thought, hey, if this is something possible, I'm going to make it my goal. And it ended up being more than just a goal. It was having that goal was driving me from looking at life on a negative aspect. Like, I looked at everything positive. I tried to always turn things into a learning experience with the hard work, because with training for an Ironman, doing the Ironman itself is hard, but that's not the hard part. It's the dedication, the money, the time away from your family, the physical pain on your stumps, and then just overall training 20 plus hours a week of just running and swimming and biking. And so it was just a big iconic thing for me to do the race. And my wife was there, which was very important to me that she was there for the race. It was just down in Florida. And just because she sacrificed just as much as me in a way to do this race. And so it took me a little over 16 hours to do it. The swim was awesome. Actually came out with some high record times in the swim. The bike was good. It wasn't bad. It's about average. And then the run, the run was pretty tough. But I got through before they have a cutoff, so you can still be considered an Ironman. So in fact, ironically, I'm in my office. I got the medal right here. I know your listeners can't see it, but I look at it every day when I'm here, and just kind of reminds me of, anything's possible.
So what were some of the issues that you ran into on the run, and how did you tackle them as I guess, I'm sure you went into the whole Ironman, with a plan. You're like, this is how I'm going to do it. This is how things are going to happen and how I'm going to handle it. But I'm sure stuff came up. You may have hit a wall. You may have come up against some unexpected challenges. What were some of those that you encountered?
Well, it actually was the game plan. I had a coach for this event, and he has specialized in other individuals with physical disabilities to do triathlons. This would be his first amputee to do an Ironman, but just over my experience of doing races, every single long distance race on a triathlon is where I start getting cuts, and my bones start getting shin splints in them. So we knew going in that the run was going to be the hardest. So training for it, we wanted to make sure that this coming out of the water, that I feel amazing. Coming off the bike, I feel fresh. And so a lot of my time was swimming and biking. But every time I did that, I always ran just a little bit. And then, every once in a while we do, 10 miles or 20 miles here just to try to get that endurance in. But training for the race was a lot different from what other people do, where I actually focused more on the swim and the bike. But yeah, starting the run, it was really, there was some tears shed between me and my wife at the beginning, because we knew that this was going to be hard, 26 miles, started the race. It was going well for the first, I don't remember quite off the top of my head. It was like the first 6 miles, I thought I was going to do okay. And then my stomach could not take any more calories. So I started throwing up, and then I was worried about being dehydrated. So I start drinking, and then I'd throw that up. And finally I had in my little emergency fanny pack. Don't judge me. I had a fanny pack. I had some like Imodium. I took that, some Tums, and I started what tasted really good was like chicken broth and Coke. So I just take chicken broth and Coke at different miles, and I eventually got through it. It wasn't until about mile 17 when I started hitting that wall that we were talking about. And it wasn't necessarily my endurance was bad. It was my stumps. Normally when I run, my stumps start to shrink because of the loss of water and just the sweating and stuff. But in this case, because of all the beating, they started to inflame. And so it would feel like, someone like an Indian burn or something, someone just squeezing your skin super tight. And so I hurried, took my prosthetic leg to get the blood flow back in there. And then I put it back on, and then I start running, another mile. And then it got to the point where like my knees started to go numb because it was pinching the nerves. And so I took it off. And at that point, it was just maybe like, a half a cup or so of blood just started pouring out of my prosthetics, because it was just like hamburger meat from all the friction and the sweat and the salt and stuff like that. And so you put the leg back on, and I just didn't know how much further I could go, because I was worried that if I took the leg off too far or too long, that I wouldn't be able to get the prosthetic on. So I would only go like maybe 15, 20 feet, and then I had to pop it off, put it back on. And I was just looking at my watch, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I continue to do this, I'm not going to make the cutoff, which is about 17 plus hours. So finally, I found something that was just, in my mind to think about, all the good things that have happened to me, all the things to be grateful for, like, my wife and my kids, and the fact that I'm even out here doing this race, my hands, my eyesight, and just started focusing on being grateful about everything instead of, thinking about the problems that are just right here in my lap. And I still don't know to this day how it all happened, but I was able, it was just, I got to the last mile, and I can hear the famous announcer, started yelling people's names. And, I'm just coming around the corner, and you can hear him through the speakers saying, Sidney Smith, the double amputee, is just right around the corner. Everybody cheer. And I was just, just mind blowing how exciting that was. And, of course, cross the finish line was probably, some of the most amazing moments of my life. So, when you're, I want to say, what'd you say? Was it 17 miles in, you said? Yeah. That really started happening? 17 miles is when I was starting to feel that, the hair on the back of my neck stand up, thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe this could happen. It's starting to get worried, I could say. So what, you said you were worried. Like what's the conversation you're having in your mind at that point? Like, what do you tell yourself to push through something like that? Because, I mean, you said it, your stump was hamburger meat at that point. It was bleeding. Yeah. It was, there's got to be something inside of you that's kind of telling you, like, why am I doing this? Is this worth it? Yeah, well, of course. And I had a lot of people leading up to the race, even my parents. My parents were probably the ones that really didn't want me to do this for a long time. My wife deep down didn't want me to do this. She knew I was very stubborn and that it would kill me if I didn't. I started thinking, man, is this worth it? And there's only been, at this point, I think I was the fourth double amputee that had done the race. And so I was just thinking, man, maybe this isn't designed to be, done on prosthetics. I mean, there's a lot of people that are amputees that do it in like the wheelchairs or the hand cycles. But so I just taught myself from day one from this procedure that if you listen to those thoughts, it's just going to become a spiral. And then as soon as you start looking at excuses like, well, I deserve this. It's good enough. And that's the most dangerous thought when it comes to doing something challenging, is to think in your mind, it's good enough. And so I just told myself, it's not going to be good enough. If you quit now, you're going to be coming right back here. And it's going to kill you. You have to get through this. And ultimately, a lot of the mental prep, which is a huge part of the race, is to just think positive, especially on the run when I'm thinking, man, halfway through the run, which is about 13 miles, it's an out and back. And when you have to go out back again, it's already nighttime. So you're running in the dark. And when you make that first out and back, you're already exhausted because you've already done, 125 plus miles. And you're thinking, how am I going to go out and back again? And I told myself not to even think that. Don't even think those thoughts. Just constantly have your mind on it. And if you find yourself slipping back, you almost have to pinch yourself and just like, I that's exactly what I did. I just kept thinking about the positivity of life, and pushed through it. And honestly, like I said, I don't know how I got to the finish line. I don't know if an Uber picked me up or what, but I got there. So no, an Uber did not pick me up, but I don't know.
I mean, that's so critical. And anyone that's listened to the podcast for a while has heard me talk about the idea of, setting your measures of success. And typically I talk about it from the other perspective of, okay, you may not reach your ultimate goal, but if you have reasonable measures of success along the way, you can walk away successful. And that works in some situations, but there are other situations where you set your measure of success and it's important that you don't have a plan B, that you have your plan A, which is to complete that Ironman. And if you even give yourself a luxury of thinking that there's a plan B, that, oh, just participating is good enough. Oh, I made a good showing. That's good enough. Suddenly that does all kinds of things to your mindset, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The recommendation I got was my brother's a runner. He ran in college, and like, well, why don't you do the swim and the bike and your brother could do the run? And I'm like, it's like you'd get a medal. Yeah, you get a medal. It's not the medal. I can care less about the medal. The medal is just there to remind you what happened. And that if that option was even there, like if my brother was waiting in the stands ready to take over the baton, that probably would have ruined my race. But yeah, you're right. Having a plan B sometimes is not a good thing to have, because it's that back pocket, and in the end it's just an excuse.
Well, it's kind of like, it's almost like hunting. It's like, okay, you go out on a hunt with someone, you scout the whole thing, you sit there, you creep in on an animal and you take a shot. You maybe you wound the animal. Your buddy next to you takes a shot and finishes it off for you. He's like, well, you can keep the antlers if you want. It's like, it's like,
yeah,
it's not the same. You didn't complete it. It's not about having something shiny to be able, and don't get me wrong. Yeah. I know there's people that probably participate in Ironmans because they want that medal to show off. I know there's people that go out and hunt, and I hesitate to even call them hunters, that solely do it for, having a trophy to show off after the fact. Those are typically also the people that tend to do sketchy things out in the woods.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would imagine it's probably the same in something like the triathlon or the Ironman circuit as well, to where the people that are just doing it so they can claim that they have a victory and show off that medal, when there's nothing deeper behind it. Those are the people that in the end, if they found a way to maybe shave off a couple of miles on their trip, or do something a little sketchy when nobody's looking, if that end goal is just to have that trophy, have that medal, and there's nothing deeper behind it, those aren't the kind of people I necessarily want to surround myself with.
No, and unfortunately there are a few. I've met some, I've caught some people doing that, not at the Ironman, but at other races. And yeah, you nailed it on the head. Hunting can be very similar. And unfortunately, as much as I love Instagram for the reason, or Facebook, social media, for the reason where it's a great networking tool. It's good to meet people. It's the way I journal things, to share my stories, what's going on. If people follow, that's great. If they're inspired, that's awesome. But what bugs me is the people that are doing things that are, you're right, they're shady in the woods just so they can get that recognition. And that's where I'm like, oh, I don't know if there's a program coming out that I don't know how I feel. I don't want to offend anybody, but there's like I don't want to say names, so I won't say names, but there's like a competition where you have two different teams and they're battling against each other, who can kill the biggest buck and the biggest bull, and those points combine, and that's what makes them the hunting competition. And it's just, as exciting as that sounds, it just sounds off to me why you would make hunting a competition. Maybe that's how people do it, but for me, it seems a little off to me.
I can't exactly put my finger on why it seems off but it kind of like you just, the way you describe it, like it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I can't exactly, I guess, elucidate why it does, because, we talk a lot and, scoring animals, that's, like Boone and Crockett, and it has a history and conservation and all of that. And, don't get me wrong, like you're out in the woods with your buddies and, you're at deer camp or something. And of course, everyone's trying to get the biggest buck out there, and you're going to go back to camp and you guys are going to talk crap to each other and this and that. But I don't know, something about that just feels like it takes away from the true meaning of it. When you gamify something let's face it, it's taking a life. It's a pretty damn serious thing. Mm-hmm. And everyone's got their own reasons for it and their own, I guess, perspective and direction they come from. But for the most part, ethical hunters have the general same set of reasons behind it. But it I don't know, it cheapens it when you gamify it like that. I think maybe that's it.
I don't know, and maybe that I don't know enough about this organization that's doing this competition, but maybe they are going to turn into something like that. Because you're right. I mean, when I go hunting, the reason I've been out 2 weeks now, and I've passed on quite a few smaller bucks. And you think about it, why would I do that? Because I want a mature deer. That's what I hate about mule deer over elk hunting is when you see a buck you want, you become obsessed with it. It's almost like the hot girl at school. It's just like, oh my gosh, I have to have you. That's the one thing I do hate about mule deer is that it's like it turns into, instead of shooting a nice deer, you have to shoot the deer, and it's yuck.
It's funny. I feel like there's something about mule deer when you see them. And I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, like way back, but you see, there's something about like a big mule deer, like a really big mule deer. When you see it, like it's just impactful. Like huge elk are really impactful as well. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like you can see like a decent sized satellite bull, and then you can see a monster elk, and the level of impact on you when you're like, holy crap, is fairly equivalent. You may get a little more excited over one, but when you see like that really big mule deer, something about it, like, yeah, I don't know. Another thing I can't put my finger on what it is. And I'm an elk guy. Don't get me wrong. Like I love elk. But yeah, you see that when you see some big mule deer, but when you see that really, that monster buck, oh man, that'll get you going.
Yeah.
Like you said, turns you obsessive.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it is, for where I hunt, it's the mule deer. I have a lot of falls all summer long. I could see them. I could scout for them. I dream about them even before the hunt. Where the elk, a lot of it is, you kind of wait till the rut comes, and where I see them in the summer, they're nowhere near, come September. And so it's almost like, oh, that's a nice elk. I will never see you again, but take care, buddy. For deer, it just becomes obsessive, and pocket is my favorite. My wife, on the other hand, it's kind of funny because I've been, I just went out last night to try to go find a buck, and my wife's like, "Oh, good luck on your hunt, kill an elk." I'm like, "Honey, I don't. It's not elk yet. It's deer, so I can't do that." It's because she likes the meat. I mean, say.
Oh, there you go. I'm excited this year because it comes down to this year, I think, is going to come down to whether or not I can shoot when it comes to the elk. I'm not sure if I even told you, but I drew Arizona strip with 3 points.
Yeah. Everybody hates you for that, I bet.
Yeah. It's funny. Everyone's like, it's that mix of like, I'm so excited for you, but I hate you so much right now. But I'm going guided this year because there's no way I'm letting pride waste this tag for me. Going with John Stallone, and he's also been sending me pictures of some of the hit list bowls as well that he's been keeping an eye on, which is always. It's a cool thing to see, but it's also a little frustrating because I've been talking with him, and it's you know how it is. You even kind of mentioned it. Like you see this bowl before the rut starts. Who knows? It could be 20, 40 miles away by the time you're out there with your bow. So it's you hope they're going to stick around. But long story short, I'm thinking this year is coming down to whether or not I can shoot, rather than whether or not I can hunt. And so I'm a little nervous about that, but I'm excited. I'm thinking this is going to be a freezer filler year, and I'm excited to have that meet and to have to hopefully buy another chest freezer. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, dude, I'm excited for you too. I overheard a podcast you did with James, Captain James Nass, and I heard about that. I think that's when I first heard. I'm like, oh man, he's going to love that. So did you change up your arrows at all, or you got still same setup?
Oh no, I changed up the arrows after my conversation with him. He and I talked for like an hour almost afterwards, just even more about arrow setups. And I'm shooting. I just put the broadheads on, and I'm going to do some broadhead tuning today and tomorrow before I leave. But I'm shooting. I went from some decently heavy arrows. Like I was shooting, I want to say 500 grains almost. Somewhere around the 500 mark. I bumped that up a little bit. I think I'm shooting almost 600 now. Nice. And I've got those single bevel, doing the kudu point broadheads. Yeah. Except it's thrashing my dang target now. Those big old arrows, they're punching all the way through my Reinhardt target. And it's like all of a sudden I went from like a decently assembled foam target to now it's all the foam is scattered all over my backyard from punching through that thing.
No,
but I'll take it.
Having a heavy arrow is good. I was teasing James. I go, hey, I heard, buddy, that you shoot rebar for your arrows. And he goes, well, that might be true if they would come in a .001 straightness. I got a chuckle out of that. So
that's pretty good. So what are you shooting this year? How about you? What's your setup for 2020?
My bow setup or my hunting setup?
Well, shoot, let's go with both. Why not?
I love talking bows. I'm shooting Easton's, Easton Access. Let's see, I got the Prime, CT3. I love my Prime. It's probably my favorite. This CT3 that I'm shooting now is probably my favorite bow. I use the Burris range finding site called the Burris Oracle. I love that. Hemsky Rest. I kind of go back and forth between Crossover Stabilizer and a new company called Cutter. The only reason why some things I like about Cutter is that it's a little more compact in the wind. But yeah, I love my bow setup. This year for hunting, I have the dedicated deer tag for Utah. So it's the program, you do service hours and you can hunt harvest 3 deer you can harvest 2 deer in the next 3 years, and you can hunt all 3 seasons. So you can hunt archery, rifle, and muzzleloader. And so this is my first year of the 3-year program. And so I've been a little bit more selective on deer, but at the same time, it's, I've kicked myself on passing some bucks. So I'm just like, man, just get this over with sometimes. And but yeah, that's what I'm hunting right now. And then I have a Utah rifle tag starting in September, but that's kind of where I'm at.
It's I will say that's the nice thing about having kicked off the business here is I get to steal away a little bit more time. I don't have to worry about requesting PTO anymore, anything like that. I just have to worry about, not doing any work and not getting paid. But
yeah,
no, you mentioned the Hemsky Rest. Last year, I think, was my first year using it.
Oh, How do you like it?
I love it. I was shooting a whisker biscuit before, and I mean, I did it just because I was like, I can't figure out one more thing to tune or to play with, like. And I shot a whisker biscuit for years, but switching up to that rest was life changing for me. My shots have become. I mean, it's such a better device. So you mentioned you're shooting the Easton Axis arrows.
Yeah.
What's the rest of your setup on your arrows?
I have 100 grain tip, 125 broadhead. I'm using AAE hybrids fletchings. It comes out about 519 for weight, 300 spine. Nothing too fancy dancy. But
what broadheads are you using for the different?
It's called Dead Meat. I'm using. It's a mechanical. I know I'm probably gonna get crap for that, but it's just one of those things. It's worked for me. I've never had any problems, and I get paranoid to think about trying something new, but it seems to be working for me. So
I don't know, man. Do we need to sick James Nash on you? Get you shooting that rebar.
Yeah. No, I'm sure he'll give me crap for that. No problem. There.
I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I love my severs. I was using mechanicals prior to this, and I love them. But I just, after sitting down with him and like him just really talking through kind of the science behind them, I was sold. I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And I mean, I'll probably still use my severs for other stuff, like maybe even deer. Definitely, end up using them for hog and for probably even for turkey and stuff like that. But, I think for elk or anything, if I ever, God willing, end up on a moose hunt or something, I think I've really been liking these Kudu Point broadheads, reasonably priced. They're a fairly local company for me. And there's something also just kind of cool about having a giant 150 grain solid hunk of metal hanging off the end of your arrow.
Oh yeah.
So you've been out chasing deer so far. How's your season been going? Otherwise, did you get out after any pronghorn this year? Anything for elk coming up?
Yeah, no, deer season's been going well. I've had some pretty good opportunities, some stalks. I think that's being a double amputee. That's probably the hardest, is just, being able to crouch, because I don't have that ankle to flex downward. So to crouch, it's like, walking on your tippy toes and crouching at the same time. It's really, really hard to do. So I've been trying different things like
I was going to interrupt you. That was something, we talked a lot, I think in the first episode, we talked a lot about like, carrying weight with your legs and how that works in the backcountry and the different, like having legs suited for that. We never really talked, I think, about stalking as with the prosthetics, because there's got to be a lot of added challenges. Cause I know, there's certain ways to walk. You don't have like you were saying, you don't have as much articulation to, I know some guys like do the sides of their feet. Some guys do their tiptoes, this, that, and the other. That I'm actually super interested in your stalking method as an amputee.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've blown a lot of stalks, and each one of them, the benefit of it is I've learned something from it and how to do it a little bit better. So I guess some of the tips I would give out, maybe if there's other guys that are listening, is, first of all, we don't have the capability of rolling the foot. So find something like some heavy socks. I use like these leather moccasins, and I just slide those on. I also had done, like, even on a turkey, if it makes it possible, I've even taken my legs off and just gone with my stumps and crawled. But a friend of mine had given me a decoy that attaches to my bow. And he's also an amputee, and he says sometimes that crouch just isn't good enough, and you actually need to stand up. And so I've used the decoy a couple times. I've had some good luck with that. Just overall, the hardest part is just being patient, because you take a step and sometimes you lose your balance and you take like 5 steps, or, you know, I've even blown stalks just by falling, and it's like, it's almost embarrassing. I sit up and the deer's just looking at me and be like, oh my gosh, dude, go home. But, yeah. So yeah, stalking is definitely the hardest.
I almost feel like there's gotta be, just between the stuff we talked about in the first episode and then the element of stalking, I almost feel like there's some sort of niche industry right there to make hunting legs for amputees. Like specific, like, and I'm being dead serious with this. Like, it's a super niche market, but like,
yeah,
you know, I feel like because there's all kinds of specialized limbs for sports and for swimming and running and things like that. I mean, I feel like there could be a market for that, almost, to where you can, maybe there's some sort of like, also, there's some additional articulation that you can set, or there's some sort of, I don't know, like a felt insert for your, for the bottom of it that you can easily swap out, or don't get me wrong. I when I lay sleep at night, I sometimes think about how I can improve, maybe even getting a little bit MacGyver on me. The problem is whatever, you know, when you're bringing more legs to carry with you in the woods, it's not fun. I mean, to haul up an extra set of legs in the mountains. But there are some pieces of feet that I've tried. Some of the thing is just like when you're standing so tall with my feet, I've thought about taking away the carbon section and just having like a small platform. But then by walking around that, which, you know, makes me about 5'3", but walking around on that, there's no forgiveness in walking. And so sometimes it just, you know, it's like walking with 2x4 just right below your knee. So that's, I don't know how to explain that, but that's just kind of how it feels. There's lots of different ways to, you know, try different things. You know, my buddy, you know, that I done this organization with, Disabled Outdoorsmen, you know, he does it in a wheelchair. And that just blows my mind. How do you stop an animal on a wheelchair? And it's, you know, it's just, you find a way by trying different things, lots of failures. And eventually you'll come through. I would actually love it if you could talk a little bit more about Disabled Outdoorsmen. I mean, I'm familiar through you. I'm somewhat familiar with the organization, but I'd love it if you could talk about the organization, the purpose, ways people could get involved. Yeah,
no, definitely. I would love to talk about that. Yeah, Disabled Outdoorsmen, it started out in Texas with my buddy Weston, where his cousin has a rare muscular dystrophy disease that typically people that have that disease, they only live to be, you know, 15, 16, 17 years old, really young. It just almost degenerates all your muscular functions. And this kid was 28, 30 years old and still going, you know. And one of the things about his cousin, his name is TJ, is that he's able to hunt massive whitetails. And he's able to hunt all the time, you know, with this disease. And the doctors feel like, you know, maybe that's why he's still alive, is that he's finding a purpose, he's hunting, he's having a drive, and that's what's keeping him alive. So that's where the idea of Disabled Outdoorsmen came about, is creating a purpose for guys or girls or anybody that has maybe some sort of impairment that, you know, yeah, we have this disability, but there's ways that we can get around that. And you'll come to find out, when you're out there doing things in the outdoors, you're really not going to think about, you know, some of the troubles that you have with, you know, a prosthetic or a wheelchair or paralyzation. So some of those things is why that organization started. But yeah, he'd called me to come down and hunt Texas with him to start off, you know, as their first, you know, guinea pig in the organization. And it was awesome. Shot my first whitetail with them. It was one of my, you know, still one of my biggest bucks to date. And, you know, just a great organization as far as, you know, helping my confidence. And I thought, you know what, why don't we do this in Utah? And so, you know, the next following year, we got some other people involved, and did an elk hunt, and then from there we made it official with a few other guys in Brock and Mike and Keith, and now a new kid, Weston, Rise and Shed. We've all kind of got together and started this Disabled Outdoorsmen Utah, and we've taken quite a few people on ram hunts. We've done ice fishing trips. We got some elk hunts planned. We have I'm taking a kid out on an antelope hunt. He's not a kid. He's a man. And
you're getting old, Sidney. You're getting old.
Yeah, I know. So, but yeah, it's growing like wildfire. As far as like we're getting a lot of good response from companies. We're a 501c3, so we're able to be that nonprofit that able to do those things. We're very grateful for those organizations that have helped us. And then volunteers. We get a lot of people that come up to us to volunteers because sometimes we need help with not just, money or product, but just being able to help somebody, maybe help retrieve an animal or find an animal, or even being a liaison for property that we can take somebody on a wheelchair on. And so all those things has made this possible. It's definitely something that it's growing, and we're getting a lot of people back us up. So it's heartwarming. I wish I could I love my job that I have, but it'd be so awesome to just say, hey, my new job is I'm going to take somebody and change their life and take them hunting. So I am grateful for this opportunity.
Where can, if folks want to get some more information and get involved, where can they find Disabled Outdoorsmen?
Well, if you go to disabledoutdoorsmenusa.com, that's our national headquarters. Our Utah chapter that I'm a part of is just called, if you go on Instagram for right now, it's Disabled Outdoorsmen. So it's DO_Utah. But yeah, going through there, we share some of those things, message us that. And we're just continuing to grow. It blows my mind. It's just exciting to be a part of something like this.
Awesome, man. So you may remember this from all the way back in episode 23, but how you've listened to enough of these, how I like to kind of wind these down. Say maybe you're at a triathlon event, or you're just anywhere, and somebody knows you're a hunter, and they're like, man, hunting, it's incredible. I've always wanted to do it. I think it's so cool, man. But I don't know. I don't have any background in it. I don't have any history doing this. I don't even know anyone to ask about it. Like, I'm not sure this is something I can do. What would you say to that person?
Oh man. Yeah, I get that all the time, especially with amputees. Guys, amputees, they honestly, it's a confidence thing more than anything. It's not a physical thing. It's not, I don't have the right fancy foot. It's really just a confidence thing. And to build confidence, something that doesn't happen overnight. Just like me when I was training for an Ironman, or even, trying, to hunt an animal that I'm not familiar with. It's always good to have a mentor to talk to, and to ask a lot of questions. And even having multiple mentors, you don't just need one guy, because sometimes that guy might get sick of you. So I would say to find that person to ask lots of questions, and then just go out there and do it. The biggest thing I tell amputees is it's good to go with somebody, but it's better to go by yourself, just because it's going to prove to yourself that you can do something. Now, of course, tell someone where you're going. You don't want to get lost. But I use trekking poles. I use, a big heavy backpack, and I just go. And I just learn something about myself, whether, areas that I feel good at, hiking in or not hiking in. And over time, it gets to a point where I don't even think about, going, miles into the mountains and just sleeping in the dirt. It doesn't faze me, where, years and years ago, I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's crazy to just go out in the boonies and not tell anyone what you're doing.
Well, Sidney, where can folks, if they want to follow along with the triathlon and the hunting adventures and all the stuff you got going on, where can they follow you?
Well, I got to apologize. Like, if you guys want to see some of my triathlon stuff, it's going to be old stuff because, like, this COVID stuff, it sucks. I didn't have one race this year. So if you like hunting, which I'm assuming if you're following this podcast, then that's all right. That's all that's going through my feed is hunting. But I'm on Facebook, Sidney Smith, SIDNEY. I'm probably the only amputee that's name is Sidney Smith, so I'm sure you can find me that way.
So click on the picture and look at the legs to make sure it's you.
Yeah, yes, of course. Like, oh my gosh, that guy sounds ugly because his voice sounds beautiful. That can't be him. Oh wait, his legs. That looks right. So,
jeez.
And then Instagram is try no feet, TRI _ no feet.
Still one of my favorite ever Instagram names to date. I remember we talked about that in the first episode. Like, that's why I started. I'm like, this guy has the greatest damn Instagram name I have ever seen.
It's funny. I've had people ask me like, well, what does it mean? Try like triathlon, or try it like, hey, go ahead and try it. Try what it's like to have no feet. And I just tell them whatever you want it to be, man. Whatever you want it to be.
So is it like triathlon, or is it try no feet? Yes.
Yeah.
It is both.
It is whatever you want.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, hopping back on. I'm really glad we got a chance to catch up again.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Man, good luck on your Arizona Strip Bowl, man. That's going to be awesome, and I'm sure it's going to be a great experience for you. I know you worked hard for that, so I wish you the best of luck on that.
I appreciate it, man. Gets my heart racing every time I start thinking about it. So,
I bet.
All right, y'all. That'll do it for this episode of The Wild Initiative. Make sure to check out the show notes page at thewildinitiative.com/164. Get links to everything we talked about in today's episode. That'll do it for this week. Looking forward to next time. But until then, I hope this podcast inspired you to get involved, get outdoors, and plan your initiative for the wild.
Thank you for listening to The Wild Initiative. Please take a moment to leave a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher, and head on over to thewildinitiative.com to get show notes, check out the blog, gear discounts, other podcasts from the Wild Initiative family, and more.